Hey guys, welcome back to Table Talk. Today we're talking about a dream match between the Russian Hulk, Denis Tsyplenkov, and the Italian gladiator, Ermes Gasparini. Denis is arguably the strongest arm wrestler to ever walk the earth after Levin. Some people may get offended when I say after Levin, but it's the truth. I'm not forcing anyone to accept it. If Denis is the strongest in your opinion, that's okay. Meanwhile, Ermes is the only guy in the world who managed to get the longest break on Levin Tsyplenkov, a man considered the peak of arm wrestling. Let's look at the strengths and weaknesses of Denis Tsyplenkov. Denis was at his prime between 2016 and 2018. His biggest flex is that he owns the strongest biceps in the world. His biceps were just slightly below Levin's, and the gap between them and other arm wrestlers was massive. Denis could curl 170 kilograms for 2 reps, and even just lifting that weight up and holding it like this is even insane. He also did a 70-kilogram barbell curl with one hand. Most people don't realize how hard that is. A 70-kilogram one-handed barbell curl is much harder than a dumbbell curl because the barbell's length creates instability. This forces the wrist, forearm, and stabilizers to work much harder to maintain balance. On top of that, Denis also done 113 kilograms on strict curl in the past, a world record that has been held for so long. Another huge strength of Denis was his back pressure. He could do 88 kilograms for 3 reps, which was the highest number ever lifted on back pressure at that time. He also had a huge hand, which would have given him a significant advantage over Ermes. Even the current version of Denis's hand makes Ermes uncomfortable, and Ermes himself admitted that Denis's hand was the most impressive one he had ever gripped. He even said it was more uncomfortable than Levin's hand. Denis also had a very sticky elbow. That happens because of joint calcification and thickened connective tissues over years of intense arm wrestling. The constant stress on the elbow joint causes microtrauma, leading to the formation of extra bone, that is, calcification, and thickened tendons and ligaments. This limits the range of motion, making the elbow feel sticky or resistant to full extension. You can see similar traits in Devin Larratt, who always walks around with his elbow at 120 degrees. Another massive strength of Denis was side pressure. His side pressure was so deadly that he could move a truck with one hand. And this angle is even harder than a traditional side pressure pull because the force vector is perpendicular to the body. Normally, people perform this side pressure movement with a high pulley, which creates an acute angle to the vector. In my opinion, for side pressure, this angle is more effective than this. However, training both variations would be even better. His wrist strength was also ridiculous. There's a video of him doing side pressure with a wrist wrench at 60 kilograms. The crazy part isn't just the weight, but the wrist wrench, which creates absurd amounts of pressure on the fingers and upper hand. This was around 2015, meaning he was likely even stronger in 2018. His explosiveness was also off the charts. Watching his hits, you'd think he was trying to break his opponent's arm. Another ability of Denis is that he could generate significant side pressure even with a cracked wrist. It's not a constant power like the one Todd manages to generate on the winning side, but he managed to effectively open up the opponent's elbow bicep angle through this hit. Weaknesses of Denis Tsyplenkov. Denis's biggest weakness was his wrist. I won't say he had a weak wrist, but his wrist was weak compared to his other strengths. There are matches against Pushkar and Arsen Liliev, and many other matches where he lost his wrist badly. Even though he could still rely on his sticky elbow in King's move, his fingers were so thick that they couldn't wrap deeply around an opponent's hand. This made it harder for him to apply full finger pressure to contain their movement. This was a problem for both Denis and his opponents. Due to the thickness of Denis's hand, his thumb and all his pronation becomes more effective in an open top roll position. It's really hard to contain his pronation in that position, so in many matches, both Denis and his opponents end up losing their hand control, making the match look messy.
You can't.
No, he can't. He don't do it. Usually he don't do it.
In this video, it can be seen that when Ermes grips up with Denis, Denis grips low, while Ermes tries to get him to grip higher, like how top rollers grip, covering the thumb, but Denis couldn't do it. Then Babkin tells Ermes that he cannot do that. This highlights a problem with Dennis's hand. Even if he wanted to grip high, it simply wasn't possible. Now let's go for the strengths and weaknesses of Ermes Gasparini. Ermes' biggest flex is, anytime he wakes up, he can say, "I have the strongest back pressure in the world." His back pressure record is 95 kilograms, but for a fair comparison, let's take 92 kilogram lifts. Looking at Dennis's 88 kilogram back pressure, his range of motion was lower, and his form was slightly easier compared to Ermes. It's more like a dragging back pressure lift. There is a lot of movement in the elbow across the pad. Ermes' arm, on the other hand, was nearly vertical to the table, planted on the front side of the pad, and his elbow didn't twitch a centimeter while pulling all the way up, making his 92 kilogram lift with full range of motion much more impressive than Dennis's 88 kilogram partial reps. Dennis definitely had stronger biceps than Ermes. However, Ermes' hand control is really amazing comparing to Dennis. The only issue is whether Dennis's hand can counter it. Ermes usually only loses hand control against long-arm top rollers, and Dennis is not a top roller. He can top roll, but his inside pulling style is more dominant. Another big factor is hand size. Levon might have the biggest and widest hand Ermes ever faced. Dennis's elbow to fingertip length is 50 centimeters, the same as Ermes's. Ermes once said that he has never lost a match if he had hand control. That's a bold and badass statement because it shows how dominant his back pressure has been throughout his career. If Ermes gets control of the hand, he's incredibly smart at finishing his opponent. Another standout strength of Ermes is his riser. His riser lift measures 64 kilograms, and guys, his riser is so overpowered that while he struggles with a 67 kilogram pronation lift, he lifts 64 kilograms on the riser effortlessly. This is something I consider beyond human capability because, as everyone knows, the riser is one of the hardest lifts to progress on. Dennis never cared about the riser, he always grabbed low. Even when he lost his wrist, he relay on his elbow flexor and pronation through the thumb. I've said before that the press and Todd roll won't work against Ermes because his back pressure is so strong that he never even feels them. His ability to bring an opponent back from a losing position is off the charts. His only real weakness is against long-arm top rollers, but that's not an issue here because Dennis isn't a long-arm top roller. The only weakness I believe Ermes will have will be the hand of Dennis. The thickness of the muscle in Dennis's hand is a real problem. We saw in Michael's match that Ermes's wrist was cracking when he went sideways in Michael's King's move. Dennis's pronation through the thumb will be a problem if Dennis go for a King's move because his thumb muscle is so big that Ermes couldn't get as deep a grip as he wanted. The thickness in the thumb will enhance his overall pronation. Now let's go for the match. Let's assume the match is happening at East versus West. Dennis and Ermes come near the table. They grip up. The go happens, and they go for a slip. In the strap, Ermes looks confident in the setup, while Dennis has a deadly expression. Ermes grips high, and Dennis grabs low. The go happens. Ermes hits with his signature back pressure, but Dennis suddenly goes for an open top roll. Dennis holds Ermes with his bicep. Ermes can't hit through the pronation chain Dennis has created. Ermes tries to climb, and Dennis stands up, attempting to engage his shoulder, but Ermes strikes whenever he tries to climb. Ermes' hand starts cracking. He goes for a press but can't finish Dennis. Ermes gets a foul. The second time, the same thing happens. Dennis's elbow flexor is too strong for Ermes to press through in the first round. The second time, the same scenario plays out, and Dennis takes round one. Round two, Ermes does the same back pressure hit. The match goes sideways and Dennis's wrist cracks a little. Ermes relies on his pronation, pulling Dennis back to the center. He tries for a press, but he loses his wrist badly. So he resets, regains his wrist, and climbs from the center. When he reaches Dennis's fingers, he presses right through and Ermes wins the round. He roars in Dennis's face. Now the match is 1-1. Round three, same setup. Now Ermes understands how to beat Dennis. The round plays out the same way as round two. Ermes wins again and celebrates. Round four, they grip up. Dennis looks aggressive. Ermes roars and hits back, but Dennis tries to contain the hit. Both their wrists crack slightly, but Dennis suddenly hits a deadly side pressure straight to the pad. That's pin for Dennis. Ermes didn't expect that attack. The crowd is going wild. Coach Ray was jumping. Now the score is 2-2. Round 5, Ermes looks nervous, but still has the fire in him. The setup is complete. Ready, go! The match stops at the center. Ermes hits Denis. However, his superior riser and pronation start taking over Denis's hand. Denis hits sideways, but Ermes contains the pressure with back pressure. Denis doesn't allow Ermes to climb and keeps hitting continuously, but Ermes climbs higher and higher. He's literally on Denis's fingers now. And he presses through. Ermes wins the round. Now it's 3-2. After this, the match would go in two ways. One will be round 6. Both come to the table. Ermes is panting heavily. Same setup. Denis goes for a king's move. Surprisingly, Ermes' wrist holds up. He climbs and climbs, going for the press, but can't finish it. Denis is waiting for a gap to engage his shoulder. Ermes climbs even higher and presses again. This time, he finishes it. Ermes wins the match 4-2. The other way would be round 6. Both grips up and Ermes hits first. Denis holds with his bicep, but his wrist is cracked. He absorbs Ermes' sideways hits and maintains his position. Then, boom! Denis goes for a monstrous hit. Ermes gets injured and gives up the round. He's not feeling good in his arm, but still goes for the last round. At this point, Ermes' arm is completely out. In the 7th round, Denis hooks Ermes, stares him down, and with one final surge, finishes the match. Denis wins the match 4-3. To me, Ermes has a slight upper hand to win this match over Denis, but anything can happen. This is my prediction if this match happens with both at their prime. I know people may have different opinions. Feel free to share yours in the comments. Hope everyone enjoys the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.